crazy talk. I don't think that's kooky talk. I think if you have number 7 and you have number 14 in a bad draft, you should be able to find 2 starters on a team that you are rebuilding. And is it time to turn this into Scoot and Shaden's team? Officially, fully. So we'll dive into that coming up in approximately 15 minutes. We have our college football countdown to kickoff coming up as well. More and more keeps coming out on this these lawsuit settlements. We talked about the walk-on thing yesterday. Now all these college football coaches, they're on pins and needles, Brenden, because now they have to figure out the decision. Is the coaching analyst or the coaching advisor going to stay as what is the biggest loophole in all of college football? And if you're not quite sure what we're talking about, Nick Saban pulled off the biggest economic loophole in college football history by essentially creating the fired coaches fraternity, the FCF. He created the fired coaches fraternity. Nick Saban was smart enough to realize, all right, you would see these coaches and they would get these jobs and they would get fired from these jobs, these head coaching jobs. Lane Kiffin, Steve Sarkisian, Butch Jones, all of these guys, USC, Tennessee, they would get these jobs and then they would get fired from these jobs. Well, if you know anything about the economics of coaching, when you get fired, you get paid. So most of these guys don't seem too heartbroken when they do get fired because you get paid. You get that buyout. Unless you're A, Jimbo Fisher, or B, another team hires you and then your buyout is offset by your current salary. You don't get to double dip, as they say. Well, Nick Saban found a loophole. It's like, how about you do this, Steve Sarkisian, who just got fired from USC and is getting paid an undisclosed because it's a private university, but somewhere probably around a $25 million buyout. How about you come work for me for $30,000 a year as an analyst? Because that's in our budget. And you can join Butch Jones and Bill O'Brien and a handful of other coaches who have all been fired by either NFL or Power 5 college football teams. Just join us and work for $20,000. That's in our analyst budget. And you essentially double your assistant coaching pool without spending any money. Well, now they're saying like, we may be eliminating the analysts from doing in-game coaching. So we may dive into that. But I didn't want to talk about watch the Stanley Cup last night. Watch the Florida Panthers when it's exhilarating playoff hockey. Couldn't even imagine Game 7, what is going on in a one-goal difference between the two. And I'm watching this. I'm kind of on pins and needles. And then I had an epiphany last night because there's a handful of sports that like you watch and you go like, man, why don't I ever watch this more? I've compared hockey at one point in time to ginger ale. What do I mean by that? Well, it's like I don't drink ginger ale on a regular basis. I don't go to the store. I don't make sure we have ginger ale like I make sure we have got creamer for the coffee. That's something you have to have every single day. But every once in a while, maybe I'm in a hospitality room. Maybe I'm up in a press box. I know a lot of people like to drink it on the airplane. But every once in a while, ginger ale comes into my life, and I go, that is gall darn good. Why don't I drink this more often? And I thought about hockey kind of is always that way. Like, I'll tune in and I'll watch playoff hockey. And I'm like, man, that is so incredibly fun. Why don't I watch this more often? And I was thinking that last night, and I realized here's why. I think it is sports hubris, sports arrogance, if you will, and not in a mean-spirited way. We grow up in America playing football, basketball, baseball. We play flag football or two-hand touch, right, in the backyard. Then you play flag football. Then at some point you'll play actual organized football. And if you're not playing football, you are playing Madden. You're playing college football 25. I played Tecmo Bowl growing up. And you get, as a kid in America, a basic knowledge of the strategies of the game of football. Now, to think that playing 7th grade or 8th grade football somehow, some way teaches you how to watch the NFL, again, that's the hubris and the arrogance. But the nuts and the bolts of the game. You know that those 5 linemen in front, they don't get to touch the ball. Right? You have to snap the ball to put it into play. Fumbles and interceptions. We all have that basic knowledge because we grew up playing football or playing it on Madden. Baseball, same way. Most of us have all played Little League. Now, you can't understand the complexities that go into spin rate, exit velo, war, defensive war, all the advanced stats. But you know about balls and strikes and walks and home runs and fly balls and errors. You learn all that as a 7, 8, 9-year-old. Basketball, kind of the same way. I realized something about hockey last night, Brenden. I don't know one bit of strategy to the game of hockey. Not one bit. You watch basketball. I don't know a ton of strategy of basketball, but I know what a high pick and roll is. Because in 4th grade, we learned about running a pick and roll in YMCA League basketball. And I'm watching hockey last night. I'm like, this is exhilarating. The only strategy I know is that when you are down in an important game, you pull the goalie, which they did, which was kind of fun. I don't know how they substitute players. They just seem to kind of know. I watched The Mighty Ducks, great movie. But it's just one of those things where I'm watching it last night, and it was tremendously entertaining. But I just think if you did not grow up playing it from an organized standpoint, not just like all of us who grew up and we watched the Mighty Ducks and we strapped on our rollerblades and played in a parking lot. The nuts and bolts of these guys are amazing. I can't imagine the amount of stamina and physical fitness and strength and skill and everything else that goes into just being able to move a puck with a stick and then do it on skates and play defense. But it's like, I don't know the basics, right? I don't know what they're trying to do. I'm sure it is incredibly complex. I have no earthly idea. That was the epiphany I had last night, is that do we have any idea what's going on in basketball? No, but we think we do because we played a little bit growing up, whether that's even in like pick up 3-on-3. Just enough of the basics of the game. Even if you played wiffle ball, you didn't even have to play organized baseball. Even if you just played wiffle ball. Did you guys ever play a little wiffle ball out there in Sherwood?
Yeah, we played some wiffle ball.
Did you go with ghost runners? Did you ever get in an argument over ghost runners? That was probably the biggest wiffle ball argument.
We played more hoops. We had a hoop in our yard, so.
See, I grew up on Joel Allen Court. Shout out to the JAC crew. Joel Allen Court, we had a basketball hoop, and we had the cul-de-sac. If you know how a cul-de-sac works, right? It's circle. Boom. There's your baseball diamond. Then it became touch football, and that's when some real fights happened.
I'll say this, though, Justin. Could you dunk on your hoop?
Yeah, we could dunk on our hoop.
Nice. Yeah.
Probably didn't do a lot to increase the fundamentals of our basketball ability.
Only time I've dunked my whole life, man.
I always wonder, what would have happened if my dad would have put a 10-foot hoop up and not had it be adjustable, and I had to shoot on that every single day. But instead, we're like, hey, let's go down to 7 feet and let's dunk on this bad boy.
Yep. See, years apart, part of our childhood is still exactly the same.
I could throw it off the backboard and dunk. It's like, on 7 feet.
I know, right? Got to get real low.
Now you're going to play high school basketball. Can you shoot? Not a lick.
I remember, after you had the rim taken down, Justin, you always be like, all right, crank it up. And I remember always being shocked, That's not 11 feet. That's not 12.
That must be 12 feet up in the air.
Yeah, you'd be like, what? So, yeah, that's funny.
But yeah, I was just thinking about that watching hockey last night, going like, well, if I just had a basic knowledge of what they were trying to do, I would probably be enjoying this a whole lot more. I enjoyed it tremendously, but this is also a Stanley Cup final, Game 7. It's pretty awesome. Best trophy in sports. Best trophy in sports. Also, I love the hockey after they win the Stanley Cup. They get in the handshake line. Hey, way to go, boys. Way to go, boys. Good effort. I love that. All right, coming up next. Is it time for the Blazers to fully commit? What are we talking about? Well, I'll tell you next. 620 Rip City Radio. One of the most impressive things about the Boston Celtics this year is they were able to win an NBA championship and danced around, skirted around, do-si-doed around the oldest talking point in modern NBA. The oldest talking point in modern NBA is, whose team is it? Whose team is this, right? In the NFL, it's pretty clear. It's the quarterback's team. And if you're not on board with the quarterback, you're probably going to be on your way out. Baseball, nobody worries about. Baseball is 9 independent contractors, all working and doing their own position. But in football, it's like, nobody ever asked the question, like, whose team is it? Basketball, that's been a question. Tale as old as time, song as old as rhyme, is whose team is it? And the Boston Celtics were able to go through that whole thing, and Brown and Tatum never seemed to buy into it. Now, maybe that's a testament to their character. Maybe it's a testament to Brad Stevens, who figured out how to put them together. But it is an impressive skill nonetheless, because the Boston Celtics won the NBA championship. And just looking at that, it's the easiest talking point in the world. If I was doing morning radio in Boston, I'm like, well, is it Tatum's team? Is it Brown's team? Is there Tatum seems to be the better player. Brown gets paid more money. Tatum's got an extension to who do you build the team around? Because if you look back at the previous champions, there's no doubt Denver Nuggets, that's Jokic's team. It's his team. Guys are going to come and go for the Denver Nuggets. Jokic is going to be the focal point. We have learned, and we've always known, that regardless of who wins the MVP in the finals, the Golden State Warriors are Steph Curry's team. That's Steph's team. The year before, the Milwaukee Bucks, that's Giannis's team. He was the alpha. Nobody's quite like the Lakers. It was a bubble, but it's still LeBron still has that aura around him that whatever room he walks into, he's in charge. Before that, it was Kawhi Leonard's team. Now, also a lot of injuries, but as good as Pascal Siakam was in that series, was Fred VanVleet. Was he on that Toronto Raptors team? As good as Fred VanVleet was.
He was so good that year.
He was incredibly good. Anunoby on that team? Norman Powell was. He had championship pedigree, remember?
I think OG was a young buck, but I think he was there.
Norman Powell was on that. But nobody back in 2019 in Toronto questioned who's going to take the final shot. It was Kawhi Leonard's job. We went out and got him. We went out and paid him, or gave up assets for him. He is a hired mercenary, but it's Kawhi's team right now. And it goes all the way back to Kobe and Shaq. What were they fighting about? Whose team is it? It's like I said, one of the oldest things you go all the way back. Magic and Kareem. All the way back to the 80s. It was Magic and Kareem. Whose team is it? Because it was Kareem's team. And then Magic came in, and then they gave him the finals MVP because Kareem was hurt. So my entire life, we've been doing this whole thing. Whose team is it? And certain teams and certain players, like the Celtics, are able to pull it off. Most teams are not. Which brings us to the Blazers. And this is the headline. Bill Orum's column yesterday in the Oregonian. We love Bill around here, even though I disagree. Well, I don't disagree with. Me and him have an ice cream rivalry. But we love Bill. And I agree with what Bill wrote yesterday, which is prepare for the summer of dealings for the Portland Trail Blazers. Is it? And he laid out maybe some possible ways that there's going to be a potential fire sale for the Portland Trail Blazers, and I agree. And here's why. At some point, if you want this rebuild to work, this has to be Scoot Henderson's team. There's no other options. Zero, zilch, none, nada. Unless you go into this draft and you find the next Giannis, right? Unless you go into this draft and you find the next Tyrese Halliburton. If you find an alpha, if you find a type 1 personality, you find a natural-born leader, it's tough to find. It's tough to evaluate. Some guys just get lucky. Some teams are incredibly good at it. Either way, if you are trying to go into next season and the next 3 seasons, because that's what we're talking about here. This is chess, not checkers. Even though I don't know how to play chess. I keep saying that. If you're going into the next 3 seasons trying to rebuild this team, at some point it's got to be Scoot Henderson's team. Now, it's always nice when you've got young 19-year-old rookies to have veteran presence around them. I can understand and I can see the benefit of that. But when you look at the guys who are now around Scoot, and I'm going to throw Shaden in there as well, 2 guys that you gave up 2 seasons for. That's the value in Scoot and Shaden right now. Not just the number 3 and not just the number 6 overall draft picks, but you gave up 2 seasons. You sacrificed the productivity of guys like Damian Lillard and Anthony Simons. You sacrificed seasons for them. So at some point, it's got to be their team. And you know what you can't have around those guys? Too much veteran talk. They have to create now their own path. And as we head into the draft and head into the summer, is it time for Joe Cronin to completely commit to this rebuild? Let's go back a couple of years. One of the biggest frustrations that I think most Blazer fans had of the Damian Lillard era was you had Dame, you had a superstar, never paired him with another all-star. Some of that was bad luck. Some of that was just bad decisions. But for whatever reason, never did you have Damian Lillard paired once LaMarcus left. Let's work in a post a PL post LaMarcus. Once LaMarcus left, and it was clear that what was supposed to be the dynamic duo of Dame and LaMarcus, boy, that would have been nice. But once LaMarcus left and decided I'm going back home to the great state of Texas,
didn't want to pay those taxes anymore.
Oh, that must have been it. It must have been the taxes. Sure. Then he went and played in Brooklyn, right? Yeah, they don't pay taxes in Brooklyn, do they? Oh, wait, a bunch? Like a whole lot?
See, no, Justin, when you're making $30 million a year versus making like $1 million a year, like taxed at a Brooklyn rate of $1 million a year.
I know.
That's a big difference. I'm just saying, it's a big bill. You're right. You are right, but so am I. We're both right.
You know my thoughts on this whole tax thing. It's like, how many NBA players make like the most ridiculous investments over and over and over again? Like maybe some of these guys are financially savvy, but if taxes were like, why do the Atlanta Hawks stink? Georgia, very low income tax rate. If any, I don't think they have any. By the way, no income tax in Seattle as well. No income tax in Washington. How come the Seahawks don't have the great, like they don't get every free agent? Anyways, I don't have time to dive into this. We're talking about the Blazers here. So post LaMarcus, the biggest frustration I would say for Blazer fans was that never did it, at least the perception. I don't know the reality. I don't know Neil O'Shea. I talked to him a handful of times. I didn't know the man. But the perception was never made the big swinging move. Maybe there was no move to be made, but it always kind of felt like, all right, at some point you got to do James Holtzhauer, shout out to Jeopardy fans, all in, right? At some point you got to take all of your chips and put it into the middle of the table and go, we have got an unbelievable talent in Damian Lillard. We need to go all in. Take a risk. And it felt like they never did. Now, maybe that was good business because, yeah, did they ever take the big swing and the big Hail Mary and big risk. No, but you know what also they never did? Miss the playoffs. So maybe that was the strategy all along. Keep Dame around, keep Terry Stotts around, keep enough players around, make the playoffs every single year. Maybe we get lucky, maybe we don't. But it felt like with Dame, never quite went all in. Now, let's look back post New Year's Eve 2021. I'll remember that New Year's Eve forever for two reasons. One, I was stuck at home with COVID. Two, essentially the Los Angeles Lakers ended the Neil Olshey era of the Portland Trail Blazers that night. 2021, New Year's Eve. The Lakers, I think, they won by like 30. Lakers won by 30. The Blazers were ravaged with COVID. Dame had the core injury that needed surgery, and they were a mess. A couple of days later, Dame gets shut down for the season. A couple of weeks later, CJ gets traded. Tank is on. Fire sale is on. Covington, Powell, CJ, Larry Nance Jr., I think he was also, wasn't he on that team? And then he got traded away. But they kept Dame. And I think if we look back now, and again, I'm glad I was not in that position, and who knows where we would be, but it's easy and with hindsight and everything else. But if we look back now, if you ask any GM where the Blazers were in tanking rebuild mode, what's the first thing you do? Well, you trade away your most valuable asset. If you are going young, you trade away your most valuable asset, and they didn't trade away Dame. They tried to do what, again, this halfway hybrid, we're going to tank away, try to get the best draft pick possible. And then you did it again. But in 2 years, and Scoot and Shaden, who knows what they're going to turn out to be. But here's what we do know. That Scoot and Shaden were, by the time they got drafted, were no way, shape, or form capable of contributing instantly to an NBA team. They're incredible talents, need time to develop. So you had Damian Lillard on your team. You didn't trade him away until he forced the hand and forced you to trade him. But you were drafting guys that were not capable of contributing right away. Again, never quite fully committing to it. So maybe this draft and the following weeks and months of the offseason is a chance for the Blazers to fully commit. I joke around about how I don't know X's and O's, but I know vibes. And it's a fun little bit we do on the show. But it also has a little bit of truth to it. Personalities and how personalities mesh matter. Maybe Scoot Henderson is a complete alpha, and every room he walks into, he feels like he should be in charge. But sometimes you have to coax that dog, that alpha out of some guys. Can the Blazers ever be truly Scoot Henderson's team if Anthony Simons is on the roster? Anthony Simons played with Dame. Anthony Simons was on a team, now he didn't play, but was on a team that made the Western Conference Finals. Anthony Simons is capable of putting up 20 to 25 to 30 points a night in the NBA. Right now, if we're being perfectly honest, Anthony Simons is probably the Blazers' best player. Can Scoot run the team and be the alpha and be in charge if Anthony Simons is on the team? Malcolm Brogdon. He was a rookie of the year. Was he sixth man of the year? He was a sixth man of the year. He played in the NBA Finals 3 years ago with the Boston Celtics. He knows every in and out of this league. It was nice to have a veteran presence there with Scoot, but I mean, they talk like at some point, Mama Bird got to push him out of the nest. Can it truly be Scoot Henderson's team if Malcolm Brogdon's on the roster? DeAndre Ayton, same thing. DeAndre Ayton played in the finals. I'm a number one overall pick. None of you guys are. I am. And I would imagine DeAndre Ayton still feels that way. Can the Blazers fully commit to turning this team over to the two guys you tanked for if you got DeAndre Ayton on the roster? Robert Williams. And this is not me trying to run these guys out of town. It is simple personality matchups. Is DeAndre Ayton going to be cool as the years go on and contract negotiations come up of being like, yeah, I'm a 20-10 guy, but this is the kids team. Is he going to be cool with that as a former? No, he's got an ego. Is Anthony Simons going to be okay with maybe coming off the bench? Probably not. I don't see a basketball way that Anthony Simons and Scoot Henderson play together. The Blazers, from a perception standpoint, never exactly fully committed post LaMarcus Aldridge with Damian Lillard, right? Never made that big, we're going all in. Then, as we sit right now, 3 years into a rebuild, can you say that the Blazers are fully committed? They were committed to the tank, but they kept Dame on the roster. We keep talking about how the Oklahoma City Thunder are the Blazers on the Oklahoma City Thunder timeline. What did the Thunder do when Dame buried the three right in front of Paul George, waved off the Thunder, and it was clear that Oklahoma City, that entity, was done? Did they keep Paul George and try to bring in young guys around him? Did they try to rebuild but keep the veteran? No. They traded everybody away that was tradable, got a gajillion picks out of the deal, and now they're one of the best teams in the West, and their future is secure, and they have so much leverage in almost every deal moving forward because they got all those picks. Why? Because they truly tanked away, and they said, we are going down to the studs. Not down to the studs, but let's keep that really nice bathroom. No, it was ripped down to the studs. There's a lot to like about DeAndre Ayton. There's a lot to like about Malcolm Brogdon. There's a lot to like about Robert Williams. And you want to get ultimate value because those guys, whether it was actual or perception, are always going to be linked to that's what they got for Dame, right? I know that it was a 3-team deal and there's all sorts of it, but that's the perception. But dealing with reality on reality's terms, if you want to ultimately hand the keys of this organization over to those two kids in the backcourt, which that's how they have to play, Scoot and Shaden, and then maybe you find another kid in this draft, I don't know, maybe a 7'2" clinging guy out of UConn, you can't have DeAndre Ayton hanging around. You can't have Malcolm Brogdon hanging around. You can't have Anthony Simons hanging around because those guys all have egos. They should. They're in the NBA. So maybe Bill Orm's right. Maybe it is time to prepare for the summer of dealings. We shall wait and see. Might not only be the summer of dealings, but it is the summer of the Hillsboro Hops. That's right. And Ticket Tuesday. That's today. We're keeping that winning streak alive all season long. Exclusive tickets to the Hillsboro Hops. Listen to the Rip City Drive this afternoon and each and every Tuesday for your chance to win. You can also get your Hops tickets at hillsborohops.com. We go on campus. Countdown to college football continues next. 620 Rip City Radio. All right, we are 67 days away from college football kicking off. Oregon will be getting its season underway against Idaho on at Autzen Stadium. But that's not the only countdown that is going on in the college sports world because this football game's got everybody freaking out. What are we? We're a month away now, Brent, or less than a month away, right? Like about 3.5 weeks away from College Football 25 coming out.
July 16th for those who ordered it early.
So I saw this. We're going to take a little bit of your video game and a little bit of my real life, and we're going to combine them because now I know that Madden rankings and Madden ratings are a very big deal to NFL players.
They are.
Right? If you can be a 99 on Madden, like that is a feather in your cap. It's kind of, it's an unofficial, like, I'm a Madden 99 guy. And I think there's only like J.J. Watt was like a Madden 99 guy. I don't think they're going to have overall player ratings, but they are going to have overall team power rankings. That's going to be coming out on the 28th. But later today, College Football 25 EA Sports is going to be ranking the toughest places to play in college football on their video game. And
it was so much fun when that was a thing back in the.
Well, it's going to be a thing later today.
Yeah, back in the day, that was one of the best aspects of the game.
So here's what I'm wondering. Now that Nick Saban is no longer the coach at Alabama, now that Dabo Swinney is not embracing NIL and transfer portal, that changes what kind of was a big power dynamic. I think there's no doubt the toughest place to play in college football right now, and that's Georgia. Because you have to combine the atmosphere, you have to combine the fan base, and you have to combine, more importantly, how stinking good the team is. And case in point, where was Georgia has won 25 consecutive games at home. They have, by 3 games, the longest active home winning streak. Michigan is second at 22. I have never thought of the Big House as a tough place to play, though. Now, maybe that's just because in a game in 2007, Dennis Dixon and the Oregon Ducks went up to Michigan, who were still ranked in the top 10 at the time, and put a whooping on them.
Who'd they lose to the week before, though?
They lost to App State, who's a good football team. How many wins? But that Michigan team ended up with 10 wins that year and beat Florida in the Capital One Bowl. It was a good Michigan team. It's a good team, Brenden. But regardless, I've never, and it's never been quite like a, oh boy, going to Michigan, that's such a tough place to play. Third place, Washington. Yeah, it's become a nightmare as of late. But Kalen DeBoer's gone. Jed Fish is in. There is, a handful of. So LSU sits there at number 10. LSU at night is still got to be one tough place to go in and get a victory. Now, I'm going to abstain with Autzen Stadium because I have my thoughts on Autzen Stadium. Oregon sitting at number, they're in the top 5 with 8 consecutive home wins. I was there at the last one they lost. It was not pretty. But that being said, Brenden, if you were creating the video game, if you were in charge of the power rankings, toughest places to play in college football right now in 2025, I put Georgia at number 1. That's got to be the toughest place to go in and get a win. Who's on your list? If you factor in team, stadium, all that stuff.
Just for the sake of argument, I went back and pulled up the 2014 list, the last time that they released this, and just was curious what's changed, who would maybe be in the top 10 and who wouldn't be. Surprisingly, a decade doesn't really have too many changes. Back then, it said Ohio State was number 1. I'd still put Ohio State up there, probably top 5. I don't know if I could go with a singular number 1. If I were to, I'm going to go a little different, Justin. I'm going to go LSU if you're going to ask me for a number 1.
Really? See,
I'm going down to Baton Rouge.
I think on its own, stadium atmosphere, all that stuff. Yeah, I'm with you on LSU, regardless of the team. But if I'm combining, nobody's going into Georgia and getting a win anytime soon. Maybe they are. I don't know.
When was the last time Georgia lost at home?
Like I said, 25 games ago.
Okay, yeah, so it's been a minute.
It's been a long time. Now, part of that is also that I don't believe they played Alabama. Like, they played one time in the regular season against Alabama. Because the SEC, well, we all know about the SEC scheduling and all of that. Is Autzen the toughest place to go in and get a win on the West Coast?
Oh, yeah, without a doubt. Well, Husky Stadium.
Now that Jed Fish is there at Washington, like, they got to figure some things out because DeBoer had Husky Stadium as a wagon, but it wasn't like 4 years ago. Like 4 years ago with Jimmy Lake, we all remember sad Husky fan, right? With when they snapped the ball over their punter's head in that Oregon game. That was not a tough place to go in and get a win. Kalen DeBoer turned them into that, and to his credit. But I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see.
It's one of those two.
What happens at Husky Stadium?
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those two for sure. Like I said, I think you can go. There's some significant advantages to both. Like, I think obviously Washington's a little bit bigger, but Oregon's a little bit more kind of on top of each other. But now, man, when I've heard both of them roar, like when that air raid siren goes off at UW,
I hate that stupid
and they're
thing.
rolling, or when the horn goes off at Oregon and they're rolling, those are the two loudest stadiums I've ever been in my life, hands down.
Now, I don't think neither you nor I have been to Utah.
No, never been to the Muss.
That was always kind of Utah the top, but they obviously Oregon went in there and put it on them last year.
Quick work. That was
quick work. But
that was a quarter. I've never seen a quarter football game before. That was a quarter game. Like, that was literally a quarter. And it was like, all right, on to the rest of my Saturday.
That whole we got a pig farmer quarterback thing, boy, that ended real fast that day, didn't it? Yeah, the horseshoe's going to be interesting. Going to be interesting this year. Obviously, Oregon's not playing at Ohio State. Ohio State's coming to Eugene. For years, Alabama probably would have been the number one just because it was Nick Saban. And now you put Alabama on any field, it's going to be tough to get a win. But I think in the SEC, I put Georgia at number one. In the ACC, I think Florida State's a tougher place to go get a win over Clemson as we sit here right now in the ACC. In the Big 12? What's the toughest?
I'd probably go Oklahoma.
They're in the SEC now.
Not anymore. Yeah, sorry.
I know. I almost said Texas. I'm like, yeah, they're not in there anymore. I mean,
Oklahoma State's pretty
loud. Is it
loud.
Oklahoma State?
Yeah, that's pretty crazy. Oklahoma State's pretty good.
Well,
pretty good environment, I should say.
EA Sports has got the rankings coming out later today. We have got a whole hour number 2 coming up next. 620 Rip City Radio. It is 7 a.m. on a Tuesday morning. Justin Myers with you. It is NBA draft week as the two-day draft set to get underway tomorrow evening. Blazers have the 7th and 14th, plus the 34th and 40th selection. Rip City Radio coverage begins tomorrow afternoon, 3 o'clock. Chad and Dwight and Rip City Drive are going to be out at Moda Center. And then at 4:30, Blazer Network coverage of the 2024 NBA draft is underway. The Stanley Cup, well, that's headed to Florida as the Panthers claim Lord Stanley's Cup over the Edmonton Oilers in a thrilling 2-1 Game 7 to take the series 4-3. And the Tennessee Volunteers take down the Texas A&M Aggies 6-5 to win the first national championship of baseball in school history. They have a 2-1 win in that series. Devon Pouncey, friend of the program, is going to be joining us live in studio in hour number 3, but hour 2 starts right now on 620 Rip City Radio. Okay. Hey, welcome back to Rip City Mornings, everybody. Coming up in 20 minutes, we have got Make or Miss. Coming up in about 45 minutes, it is Tuesday. It is Tuesday, and you will all get off my lawn. As I've got some grumpy old man thoughts as we move into the summer. Yeah, we mentioned it a little bit yesterday, and I think kind of worth reiterating. And I love college baseball. The college baseball numbers, I think, were higher than they've ever been. And you look at the ratings, and some of that, I think, was, let's be honest, the NBA Finals were a snooze fest. It just was. It was not an entertaining NBA Finals. And it looked like the Stanley Cup Finals was going to be a snooze fest as well because the Panthers went up 3-0, and it did not look particularly close. And so I think that helped get a little bump in the college baseball ratings, but the numbers were bigger than they have ever been. And again, mentioned it yesterday. You had 2 SEC teams going toe-to-toe in Texas A&M and Tennessee. You had four SEC teams there in the 8-team field in the College World Series, and the other 4 was the ACC. Part of that is just geography. All right, part of that's geography. Warm weather schools will always have a baseball advantage over colder climates. They always will, which is why I've said over and over again, as much of a Duck homer as I am and as much of an Oregon State hater as I was born and raised to be, it's one of the most, if not the most impressive thing. Between Oregon football becoming what it became and Oregon State baseball, Oregon football becoming a perennial top 25, top 15, top 10 football program in a state where there are very limited 5-star college football prospects. Unbelievable to pull that off. Oregon State baseball being able to pull off being a 3-time national champion, multiple-time College World Series participant, and a national baseball power in a place where, I mean, it just stopped raining last week. Like, it's almost July. It just stopped raining like last week. So for what Oregon State baseball has done, it's an unbelievable accomplishment because anybody that's ever played competitive baseball here in the Pacific Northwest knows that, like, at some point you're like, I'm sick of this cage. I'm sick of being inside. I'm sick of taking ground balls on a gym floor. I'm sick of working out inside you have the nicest indoor practice facility, and Oregon State and Oregon both have very nice indoor facilities. Nothing beats playing outside in the sun. It just doesn't. So you got geography. But the other part of this, and now that game wrapped up, well, I know we talked about when Oregon and Oregon State were both eliminated, that essentially also eliminated the Pac-12. The final out of the College World Series last night that essentially ended the athletic school year. The Pac-12 is no more. And I mentioned it yesterday. There's a reason why the SEC put 4 teams in the College World Series. Yeah, they play in the sun. I get that. I'm not that oblivious. But also, take a look at the facilities where Texas A&M plays. Take a look at the facilities where Tennessee plays. Take a look at, even in Kentucky, known for basketball, they all have significant seats, big-time capacity, fill those seats with capacity, and are investing not just into football, but investing into basketball, investing into baseball, expanding stadiums. And, that's why when the SEC says, it just means more. You want to know why the Pac-12's dead? A lot of reasons. But the reason why the SEC is thriving and the Pac-12 is dead is because, well, they put their money where their mouth is. We're going to pay for coaches. We're going to pay for players because you can do that now. We're going to pay for facilities. We're going to pay for upgrades. It just means more. And anybody that's ever been to any kind of sporting event, when you walk in, whether it's a big-time football game, whether it's a massive basketball matchup, even a big-time baseball series, when you walk into the building, and there's a buzz, and there's an energy. It feels bigger. It feels more important. And guess what? The best athletes want to play in those places. They want to play in those environments. The cautionary tale for the rest of college sports is you want to be where the big boys play, you got to spend money like the big boys do. Here's a thought I had last night as Tennessee in front of Peyton Manning and Morgan Wallen pulling off the national championship. This is another thing that's been going around the internet. Now, I've tasked Brenden, who did a fantastic this was unfair of me, which is why I call him super producer Brenden. JJ Redick just dropping F-bombs at the introductory press conference. Now, Brenden, I believe there were 2. I want to make sure we got both of them edited. But I saw that there was a ton of people talking yesterday, and I am far from a pearl clutcher. I do not get offended by foul language. As a matter of fact, when I am not on the air, this particular radio host curses like a sailor. I do. I curse a lot. I am not offended by foul language, but I did find it interesting that a guy who has no coaching experience, a guy who has got a first-time job in JJ Redick, who has been on TV for, well, first off, he's a former player, so he knows the rules, but has been on ESPN for I don't know how long. We're just casually dropping F-bombs now as an NBA head coach. We're just casually cursing in front of a microphone. Now, some people are like, well, this is beneath him. This is a bad look. And on the other hand, there is the coaches curse all the time in practice. This is nothing out of the ordinary. I found it fascinating, though, that, yeah, it's one thing when you have the Michigan head coach, or the Michigan head coach, but the interim head coach, Sherrod Moore, when he took over for Jim Harbaugh, he dropped some curse words there. And it's an emotional game. It's a post-game press conference or a post-game interview, right? You kind of go, but we're dropping F-bombs in the introductory press conference. Did we get them, Brenden? I'll clean up. All right, here we go. So let's hear. This is JJ Redick, Lakers head coach, NBA head coach, in his introductory press conference.
I don't really have a great answer for your question because I really don't give honestly. I want to coach the Lakers. I want to coach the team. I don't want to dispel anything. I don't. I want to become a great coach in the NBA.
And he dropped another F-bomb after that, but good job editing because we get the point. Is that a bad look? I mean, I guess in the end, it's we choose what we care and don't care about, and sometimes I've always said this about the social media, like, give it 48 hours, are we still talking about it? Do you know what I mean? Something happens, everybody reacts to it, give it 48 hours. But I was just surprised that at a head coach's introductory press conference, it's like, I don't give a you could say a whole lot of other words there and get your point across, but I guess J.J. Redick just wants to drop F-bombs now? Is this a new generation of NBA head coaches, Brenden? Just cursing like sailors in the press conference?
To quote Mike Tomlin, but I'm going to paraphrase instead of plural to make it singular, I do not care.
Okay.
So,
I don't think I care either. I just thought it was...
Yeah.
There was a lot of reaction yesterday, and probably because... Well, there were two really good games on TV.
Maybe,
but I just saw a lot of reaction of... And can I tell you what I think some of it is? I've been in this industry for 20 years. I have had to censor myself for 20 years. That's the name of the game. That's the price of doing business. Yeah, every once in a while, I get a little envious of podcasters, which J.J. Redick is. I get a little envious of podcasters who get to just freely drop curse words left and right. Now, that being said, I do think there is something to self-editing and how creative can you get. You know, I love comedians, and I'm not afraid of an F-bomb here or there, but have you ever been around a comedian, or you ever heard a comedian where just all they do is curse? And it's like, all right, so clearly you're not really that funny. You just are going by shock value. And you look at, like, Seinfeld, Jim Gaffigan, Nate Bargatze, you look at these guys who are hilarious and don't have to curse. It's kind of a fun little, but like, I don't know. It was just an interesting reaction that a lot of people have, and I think some of it might have been some jealousy. I'll admit, sometimes I get a little bit jealous. These podcasters just get to rip. I mean, F-bombs left and right. I'd like to drop an MF on something here and there, but I got.
Well, you could always come on my podcast, Justin, and drop some
Can
fun.
I?
Oh yeah. I said. I'll be honest, and it is what it is. And
I was on your podcast once. I thought I behaved myself admirably.
Well, you did say you didn't think Jonathan Smith would leave.
Well, I was wrong on that one.
I'm just kidding.
You're with me every single day. I'm batting at about 40%.
But I'll be honest, Justin. Like, again, I love doing the show, love doing this with you. These 3 hours are the only time in my 24 hours a day I need to filter myself. Because I talk like a sailor, and I don't have any qualms about it. So
well, I don't either, but it's just I thought it was interesting that like JJ, like that's the time he decides I want to drop this F-bomb.
The timing's odd for sure, but like, I don't have a big deal with it.
Probably not a big deal.
Some people probably would. Maybe the kids were at the press conference, Justin. Maybe kids were there.
Well, the internet's changed kids forever because
that's true. TikTok gives them swear words at 8 now.
Oh, all right, we've got Make or Miss next. 620 Rip City Radio. All right, coming up in actually less than an hour, because he's going to be in studio for the entire third hour, our good friend Devon Pouncey is going to be joining us. It's also Tuesday, so you will all get off my lawn. Coming up in approximately, 20-ish minutes. But right now, it is that time of the morning. Let's fire up Make or Miss. Here we go.
All right, firing up Make or Miss here on a Tuesday. Sure, LeBron had nothing to do with J.J. Redick's hire.
Yeah, I believe it 100%. I'm going to say make. I am agreeing with your sarcasm.
They only talked one time, Justin.
So I appreciate.
There's only one time. It was for like 5 minutes, and they did not talk for abundance of respect for each other. So take that for what you will.
I don't know if I would feel differently about LeBron James if
You were
what I'm about to say actually happened, but I may have always just been anti-LeBron because I am pro Michael Jordan, and I've always maybe found a way to not like LeBron James. But it's stuff like this. You know what I mean? It's stuff like this where like LeBron James, he's like the Eddie Haskell, timely reference, but he's the Eddie Haskell of the NBA in 2024. Now, are you familiar with the phrase or the term Eddie Haskell, Brenden? You shouldn't. It's dated for even me. But back in the 50s, I think, there was a show called Leave It to Beaver. And Leave It to Beaver's brother, Wally Cleaver, he had a friend, and his friend Eddie Haskell, and Eddie Haskell was always up to no good. He was up to some nonsense. He was up to some shenanigans. But every time that Ward and June Cleaver would be around, Eddie Haskell would be like, "Oh, hello, Mr. and Mrs. Cleaver. How are you, Mrs. Cleaver? You look lovely today." And a sharp suit there, Mr. Cleaver. And Eddie Haskell was always up to nonsense. He was always up to no good. So what watching TBS a lot as a kid gets you a lot of references to shows from the 50s.
Yeah, how were you watching shows that were black and white? I would love to know.
It was on TBS before the Braves game.
How and why?
I watched Leave It to Beaver. I watched the Andy Griffith Show. I watched Dennis the Menace.
Watch MASH while you're at it?
I watched MASH a lot. MASH was in color, and that was more the 70s. But yeah, Brenden, I can tell you anything you want to know about MASH, okay? Because here's the deal.
Little House on the Prairie?
I was not into the Ingalls family, but
all right. That's like my one from the OG days. So
yeah, you watched a lot of Little House on the Prairie?
It was very popular in our house. Very popular.
Yeah, Mom was a fan?
Big time, yeah. Again, back when she was like, this is one of the things that was on the 5 channels I grew up with. So, there you go,
I was never, I know of Little House. Shout out Michael Landon. Underrated.
Oh, I know.
Gone too soon, by the way. Between what was it? Obviously, Little House on the Prairie, and then Highway to Heaven. Michael Landon was on Highway to Heaven. That was a big show back in the day. But on TV,
it doesn't age well, Justin.
None of them do.
Like my my brother-in-law. Like again, my sister was like, "Oh yeah, I like Little House on the Prairie." And he's like, "Oh, I've never watched it." He watched it. He goes, "Man, that's kind of a tough watch."
It's tough watch.
And my sister's like looked at her like, "That's fighting words," kind of a thing.
What is
good fun stuff?
What is the oldest show that you watch as a 28-year-old, and probably due to reruns? Because again, I watched all of these shows because I had TBS. Now you probably don't have to because you grew up or lately have been in an on-demand world. But when I was growing up, before the Braves came on or on a Braves rain delay, TBS was on, and you would have the Andy Griffith Show. You would have the Addams Family. You would have Dennis the Menace. Hello, Mr. Wilson. And, of course, you would have Leave It to Beaver. And then there was the Brady Bunch and other shows. And then here's the other thing, because you made a joke there about MASH. MASH was the Seinfeld and The Office and the Parks and Rec of its time. Here's what I mean by that. On TV, in one of the 4 channels, 5 channels that you would get, the news would come on at 5, right? And at 7 o'clock, it was the magazine shows. Hard Copy and A Current Affair would come on, and Inside Edition and Entertainment Tonight. And then at 8 o'clock, well, that's when Growing Pains was on, and that's when Step by Step, and that's when and Family Ties and all of those shows would come on at 8 o'clock. Well, between 6 and 7, at least in our house, old episodes of MASH, always on. Just like you would flip on Comedy Central at any point in time. You're like, oh, Parks and Rec is on. That was MASH. Every network after local news, but before Inside Edition came on, oh, you best believe Mom and Dad were watching MASH.
I would say.
So I know all about Klinger and Hawkeye, and there was Trapper, and then Trapper left, and BJ took his spot, and then Frank. Yeah, I know all about MASH. What were we talking about? Oh, LeBron.
You watched The Love Boat too?
I've seen episodes of The Love Boat. I've seen it. Again, there was a time when I was growing up, and I don't know if you kind of had this. There's an in-between phase where it's like, you're kind of like, I would have to go for like an hour, go to like a sitter before I went to elementary school, because my parents were teachers. So my parents had to go to school first, and then I would have to hang out for like an hour, and then I would go to school. And there's that time when you're old enough to where you don't want to watch cartoons, but so you want to watch TV shows, but it's the daytime. And so the only shows on are old TV shows. So yeah, every once in a while there's a couple of old episodes of Love Boat on there.
I would say
Captain Stubing? Yeah.
The only thing that would I can pretty confidently say there's not a lot of old TV shows that I watch. Like
The Office is probably the oldest show you watch, right?
Around that same time,
That was like 20 years ago? It's 2005?
Yeah, like around that same time, like to Justin's point, Nick at Night became a big thing.
My Three Sons.
So like George Lopez was always.
What about Fresh Prince of Bel-Air?
Yeah.
So Fresh Prince of Bel-Air was a 90s show.
Yeah, so that was on Nick at Night along with George Lopez.
Okay, so that's probably the oldest show you watch.
Saved by the Bell a little bit. Same with, oh gosh.
Which is funny
Mom,
because like Fresh Prince of Bel-Air to you is like MASH to me. Like, it was what my parents watched. And
even still, though, it was odd because it wasn't like my parents were watching Fresh Prince. It's like the kids who were 10 years older than me.
Yeah.
So that's where I'm struggling to find like a legit, like, hey, this was on ABC from 80 to, like, it might be Little House, dude. Like, that's it. Like, that's it, man, that I've watched. All right, nevertheless.
Well, all right, let me make my point really on LeBron.
Yes, go ahead.
Because he is the Eddie Haskell. So Eddie Haskell, though, he was always scheming, right? And then he was like, oh, hello, Mr. Cleaver. You look great. And he was always like, LeBron has been doing this for years. Oh, I didn't get Mike Brown fired. It's like, you kind of did. I didn't get Frank Vogel fired. No, I had no. And it's the same thing where it's like, when you surround yourself with yes men your entire life, and that's what LeBron James has, and credit to him. I wish I was rich and famous enough to have a whole crew of yes men who told me how awesome I am, but he does. He has nothing but yes men in his life, and that's why he believes that when he says, oh, yeah, I watch The Godfather before every before the playoffs every year, and it's like, name one scene. Oh, all of them. Too many to count, really. And it's like, I read all these books. Hey, you see you reading the autobiography of Malcolm X there. What's your biggest takeaway from that book? And, well, I mean, too many, really. It's and because he has been, and to his credit, it's based on his talent and hard work, but his entire life, from the moment he was on Sports Illustrated at the age of 16, he was the cash cow that nobody was going to say, it's the emperor's new clothes, right? Nobody was going to, hey, LeBron, dude, just just say take the gun, leave the or take the cannoli and leave the gun. Just say that. That's all you got to say. And no one will ever ask you about the Godfather. But nobody's going to upset the apple cart because it's a payday for everybody. And therefore, he believes that everybody else is believing his baloney. Nobody's believing your baloney, dude. Of all the people in the world who could be the head coach of the Los Angeles Lakers, just so happened to be your podcast co-host? And you had nothing to do with it? Zero? Zilch? Nada? Yeah. I believe that like I believe you watched The Godfather and can't name one scene. Just say horse head in the bed. Just say it. Have you ever watched The Godfather?
Oh, yes.
Favorite scene? All of them?
Yeah, all of them.
You ready to count?
I kind of like when that's a good question. Like, okay, well, first you have to.
I love when they send the fish in the mail, and they're like, what is that? It's a Sicilian message. It means Luca Brasi sleeps with the fishes.
Help me out here. Sometimes it kind of is, like I said, I've only seen, like, is it where's the one where they blow up Michael's car? And he's in Italy getting.
That's Godfather 2.
Okay, that's what I thought. I just wanted to make sure before I said. But yeah, I love that. Like that scene when Michael's car gets blown up. It's like I know we make fun of him, but like honestly, in like 6 hours of movie between the two of them, it is actually kind of hard to pick a good scene.
Tattaglia could never outfought Santino.
Like I'm just saying. Like it's there's lots though, but no, I don't know that he's ever really settled.
No, again, like I say, I know he didn't read any of those books, and I know he didn't watch The Godfather, and I know he didn't know in warm-ups that Kobe was going to have 80 because he said that too. It was like, oh yeah, I knew Kobe. I watched him. I watched that game, and I knew, oh, he's getting 80 tonight. Oh, really? Yeah, but it's that's the stuff that annoys people because it's like, dude, you're too good. You don't need to lie. And by the way, if LeBron James came out and said, yeah, I've been around J.J. Redick for years now. I know he is a tremendous basketball mind. And I obviously gave my input to the Los Angeles Lakers. And they made the decision. But of course I had input on this. And I have a respect for J.J.'s knowledge. And I look forward to going to win a championship. How hard is that to say? No. Just lie. Just keep lying and pretending. And everybody around you will tell you that, yep, no. Everybody believes it. Nobody's believing it.
Yeah. No.
Just like they don't believe that you say, oh, I don't want to play with Bronny. I don't know how that got out there. You mentioned it over and over and over again when the kid was in high school. When you were at his game doing slam dunks in the layup line of your kid's game because you couldn't handle not being the center of attention. Anyways, what's next?
Last thing. So, was Bonanza in that mix too?
I've seen episodes of Bonanza. What up, Hoss?
See, you got that one too. Just had to hit all the token shows of the time.
I've seen episodes of Bonanza, but not the way I watched like Andy Griffith or Dennis the Menace, and there was just that. And they brought in a new Mr. Wilson, like how, Mr. Ed. Are you familiar with Mr. Ed? He's a talking horse, Brenden.
Yeah, no.
He's a talking horse.
Sorry. Sounds cool. Ish.
It's cool for like a minute, and then you're like, all right, this show's not funny. They clearly just got this horse's lips to move. All right, do we have another one?
Yeah, let's.
I mean, I could sit and talk about old shows that I watch on and on and on, but I don't know how our listening audience is enjoying it.
Nevertheless. All right, let's get on over to the next thing on Make or Miss. Justin, at least Tennessee's beers are going to pay for something.
Okay, so they are, according to the most
beer
expensive beers
in college athletics.
And I know I've said this before. I'm sure that's at Neyland Stadium where the Tennessee Volunteers play. It's $12 a beer. It's $10.50 at Autzen. Don't believe that $5 stuff. Trust me, I buy them. Do you think that money actually goes to the athletic department, or do you think that's like the concessions?
I bet that goes straight into an NIL fund.
Because, I said that I talked about that with Oregon State, because doesn't Oregon State have like their own, don't they have like a brewery science thing, or am I thinking of Washington State? I might be thinking of Washington State, where they've got a brewery science, like they teach kids how to get into the the brewing industry.
They teach them that at Oregon State? Or are you asking if it had a thing with the football stadium too, or just in general? In general, I know they taught it there because I've been to the room where they have the giant.
Okay, so they did. That was in Corvallis. Yes. I'm not losing my mind. Got it. And so I was saying, make whatever Oregon State lager or whatever you want to call it, right? Sell that at the games. And there's your NIL fund, and then you tell all of your fans, hey, you can help keep or recruit players and enjoy this delicious beer at, $11 a beer, because that's what people will pay. I guess it's 10 at Reeser is what they said on the thing, even though I don't believe that thing because it was wrong about Autzen. So I don't know if that $12 a beer in Tennessee goes straight to the athletic department and an NIL fund. If it doesn't, it should. It 100%. I think Purdue did something like this where they created their own beer and had a huge fundraising kick. Because you imagine 6-7 Saturdays every year, you get 80,000 people. I don't know what, a quarter of them are going to buy a beer maybe? I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it's less than that, but still. Yeah, Tennessee was good. Can I take confession? Because a lot of people didn't like Tennessee or Tennessee's coach because they are, again, we just talked about self-editing last. There's a word I'd like to use for what Tennessee is. Jerks isn't enough of a strong enough word, but it's in that neighborhood. I kind of like that Tennessee is the bad boys of baseball. I kind of respect it. That just no matter what, they are the best team in America, and they're still going to act like they're mad at everybody. And their coach is going to get mad at everybody. I know a lot of people get turned off by that. I kind of like it. I do. I kind of like it. Call me crazy. I always kind of like that. And I know that 162 games in a regular season in Major League Baseball is a long, long, long time. I get all that, but I like watching kids getting excited and fired up playing baseball, right? We celebrate guys getting fired up in the NFL and in college football. We celebrate. Guy goes and screams on an and one in basketball. We celebrate it. Let's see a little fire in baseball. I love it. I like that they're a little fire. I love that they talk trash. I love that they back up the trash talking. It was fun to watch.
There was a lot of energy there last night. Tell you one thing, Justin. I've said this for a while. I think next time, just because I've missed it now 3 times, but next time my team goes, it's going to be really hard not to go. It is such an endeavor, and you can understand this and appreciate it too, because I know you've looked at how much of an endeavor it is to go to sporting events across the country or even the Masters. But Justin, when you have the College World Series,
by the way, I lost the lottery.
Bummer.
I will be around next April. Don't worry. I'll be here.
Okay.
Because I got the email that said didn't happen for you this year. So
keep on keeping on.
Augusta National, let me know. I shall not be attending the Masters next year.
But no, that
unless the good folks at Rip City Radio need a correspondent there. I don't know if that's going to be in the cards either. So you're okay. Pledge right now. Beavs are in the College World Series next year. You're in. You're gone.
Well, that's what I was saying. Is it's difficult because you know this, Justin, that if your team makes it in, you almost have to allot going to Omaha for almost 2 weeks. Because you have the first week, then you have the lead into the championship, add in a couple days for weather delays that are going to happen.
Yeah.
And can you take 2 weeks off and go to Omaha, Nebraska? That
I think you could take a long weekend off and just enjoy it and then come back and watch the rest on TV.
Yeah, this is true.
All right, coming up next, you all get off my lawn. Before we do that, I want to tell you about Toyota and iHeartRadio. We need your help filling the truck, canned and non-perishable foods that benefit the Oregon Food Bank. So bring your donations and look for a specially marked Toyota Tundra this Saturday from noon to 2 at Southwest Boones Ferry Road in Wilsonville. We'll see you at Fred Meyer, and while you're there, enter to win a trip for 2 to the iHeartRadio Music Festival in Las Vegas. So join us at Fred Meyer as we fill the truck for Toyota and the Oregon Food Bank. Wrapping up hour number 2 next, 620 Rip City Radio. All right, it is Tuesday. Tuesday brings a lot of good things. Tuesday brings us Devon Pouncey coming up in a few minutes in the entire third hour. Tuesday brings us Ticket Tuesday. That's right, on Rip City Drive this afternoon. And every Tuesday afternoon, you can enter for a chance to win, or you can listen for your chance to win exclusive tickets to the Hillsborough Hops all season long. So Ticket Tuesday, and by the way, you can just get Hops tickets at hillsboroughhops.com. But Tuesday also brings some grumpiness. Probably why we give away tickets on the drive, because everybody's grumpy all day, and it's like, hey, how about this? We'll give you some free stuff. But Tuesday brings some grumpiness, as I have talked about multiple times. You hunker down for Monday, and then you get into Tuesday, and you're like, boy, it just feels like this week is just dragging along. So instead of just bottling up all that negative energy, I say let's let that out, and I combine that with some of the things in this world that really, as a grumpy old man say, get off my lawn. So we created a segment with such a name. It is time for Get Off My Lawn. All right, let me preface today's Get Off My Lawn with the fact that I love Costco. I love Costco so much that I am willing to, at times, as I did this weekend, venture on a Sunday. And I did. I went to Costco on a Sunday. I know. You take your own happiness in your own hands when you go to a Costco on a Sunday, but sometimes you just don't have any other options. Sometimes that's just the only time you can get into Costco, and so I did. I ventured into Costco on a Sunday, and much like Tuesday, Brenden, I hunker down. I know that when I go to Costco on a Sunday, oh boy, it's going to be a battle for a parking spot, and that's fine. I'm like emotionally and mentally, I am prepared. So you would think, am I going to complain about people who are sitting in the parking lot with their right or left blinker on when it's clear like the other person hasn't even started loading their toilet paper into the back of their SUV, because they're all SUVs? No, I was prepared for the parking lot situation. I was also prepared for a Sunday Costco run that has people. What is it again in the Costco parking lot that just once you get out of your car, you forget that other cars exist? Have you noticed this phenomenon, Brenden? I know you don't go on a Sunday all that often or ever, but you know how like people will drive and then you get out of your car and then you just walk in the parking lot as if cars don't exist. Like not staying to one side. You're just going to walk right down the middle as if there are no other cars. And you think that would make me grumpy, but I was prepared for that as well.
But you chose your bloodbath.
I did. I did. But do you see what I'm saying, though?
I do.
You just drove your car there. Mm-hmm. You get out of your car, and you're just like, now I shall just walk in the parking lot as if no other cars are around.
People are crazy. Honestly, so, that's the other thing. What?
It's not that. That's not what got me fired up. It did not even get me as fired up of people who, and again, I said at Costco, they should put like a lanes so you can have your cart instead. The people that are walking at a leisurely pace right down the middle of the aisle instead of, one side of that didn't even. Today's Get Off My Lawn from Sunday at Costco to the receipt checkers. I understand you got a job to do, and I understand that you are in the business of loss prevention. What they are checking in the basket, I don't know. I don't know the method to their madness when they have their receipts there and you take it. And I don't know if it's just like, what do they call that? Security theater that just it scares enough people off. Now, I'm not trying to steal anything from Costco, nor should anybody. You shouldn't steal anything from anywhere. Pay for your stuff. But I don't know what they are checking. I don't know how necessary or how much loss prevention is happening by having those two very nice people sitting there at the exit of the Costco marking off the receipts. But can I tell you something? When it is Sunday, when it is around, 11 a.m. on a Sunday, when, as Brenden described it, when it is a bloodbath, when it is a zombie apocalypse, when it is a apocalyptic wasteland in the Costco, where it is every man for themselves and every person for themselves and every woman for themselves, every child for themselves. Hey, we came here with 3 kids. We only have 2. Who cares? We got to get out of this Costco. Brenden, that is not the time when you are checking receipts to then have a fun conversation about everybody else's Sunday plans as they are trying to leave. It is simply mark and go and get the lane moving. So to the receipt checkers, especially on a weekend, especially on a Sunday morning, when you can look up and see. Now, I realize maybe that's some kind of power that I have never had in my life. Maybe that is an intoxicating elixir that I do not quite understand. The idea of everybody is now waiting on me. Okay, what do you have here? Ooh, okay, you got a lot of hamburger buns there. Are we having a picnic today? No, we are moving on to the cars. So to the receipt, because I'll tell you what, when I go to Costco on a Sunday, you know who is hustling? Beep, beep. The people running the check stands. They're hustling. Is this yours? Is this your heavy stuff in there? Do you need a box? Are you sure? Because I don't think you do. By the way, other thing, Costco really cutting down on the boxes. Have you noticed this?
Yes,
really cutting down on the boxes. There used to be a time, back when we were a serious country, there used to be a time where you go in and you get your Costco stuff, and they'd have a big old box for you. Now you go in, would you like a box? I sure would. 2 items go in a box. Everything else goes back in the cart. And they're like, you sure about that box there, doofus? So now I don't even ask for a box anymore. Unless it's got to be actually. But anyways, different time, different rant. But when it is a nuts checkout on a Sunday Costco, boy, where's your card? Boom, scan the card. Boom, 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 boom. There you go, right there. Pay it, tap whatever you need to. Have a great day. Moving on, moving forward, in and out, and then you go past the. By the way, who are these people getting their glasses on Sunday? I guess I don't have glasses, but like the optometrist, they're busy. Does anybody ever stop and ask about the gutters? Because you walk past the lady selling the gutters.
Nope. Never. I don't know how those people make commission.
You just need one, I guess.
Yeah, it's true.
You just need one. So you walk past the gutter, and then comes a bigger bottleneck than Wilsonville, right? And I've seen, that Wilsonville bottleneck. Anybody that's driven south on a football Saturday, you know what I'm talking about.
But to say that Costco's not a part of the reason that bottleneck is, so it's like it already plays a role.
The one in Tiger?
No, I'm thinking of the one in Wilsonville. I'm sorry. I forget you come this way to come to Tiger. No, you didn't even. This Costco you're talking about is your Costco.
Clackamas.
Yeah.
It's my Clackamas Costco. But every Costco is this way, that whenever it gets a little bit crowded, something about the people with the markers, they just want to go a little bit slower.
Speaking of which,
just trying to slow everybody down.
We'll drop this as a tease.
Uh-huh.
Some rumors, Justin. Costco coming to my hometown.
What?
Some rumors afoot.
Here comes the hot dogs and the rotisserie chickens. All right. So there you go. Get off my lawn. You want to chit-chat? That's fine. But make sure there's not 7 carts backed up trying to get out of this Costco on a Sunday. We are trying to get to hour number 3 next, 620 Rip City Radio. It is 8 a.m. on a Tuesday morning. Justin Myers with you. NBA draft happening tomorrow. Two-day draft set to get underway with the Blazers at the 7th, 14th pick on day one, 34th and 40th over the next couple of days. We have got wall-to-wall coverage here on Rip City Radio starting tomorrow at 3 with Rip City Drive. They'll be out at Moda Center until 4:30, and then Blazer Network coverage of the 2024 NBA draft. The Florida Panthers are your Stanley Cup champions. They beat the Edmonton Oilers 2-1 to take a 4-3 series lead. Canada still shut out for the Cup. And the Tennessee Volunteers take down Texas A&M 6-5 to win their first national championship in baseball in school history. So your College World Series champion, Tennessee Volunteers. Devon Pouncey is live in studio for the entire third hour. So let's get it underway right now on 620 Rip City Radio. And welcome back to Rip City Mornings. I am your host, Justin Myers, and back in the seat, in studio, live, our good friend of the program, Devon Pouncey's back. Pounce, how we doing?
I'm doing well. Happy Tuesday. The sun's shining.
Sun is shining.
I love the weather out here right now. We're getting the summer finally, man. We're getting the summer.
All right. A lot of stuff to dive into. And coming up in about 20 minutes, we mentioned something earlier in the show. Bill Orm of the Oregonian wrote a column yesterday saying it might be the summer of massive trades. It might be the summer of essentially a Blazer fire sale. And I have some thoughts on that. But before we dive into that, I did want to get your thoughts because we've talked about this a handful of times. I know that the narrative on this draft has been it's not that good of a draft. That's been the overlying narrative of this draft. I guess maybe because I'm just such a contrarian that when I hear something over and over and over again, I'm like, there's no way it can't possibly be true. And I've said that I think maybe there's some of that. There's no Wembanyama, right?
Right.
We knew who Wemby was 2 years before he was going to be in the draft. Like, we knew who Scoot Henderson was even before the Blazers were even in contention to be able to draft him. We knew who that guy was. So there is a little bit of that, but I still contend that while this draft may not have the one bright shining star that everybody was coveting, I think it's more of an unfamiliar draft than maybe a bad draft.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
I get what you're saying. Just in terms of, like, for one, I mean, when we talk about men's college basketball, it just wasn't that popular this season.
No.
So I do think there's a lot of, like, unfamiliarity in regards to majority of the guys that are coming out of college. And then, like you said, on the other end, it's either guys that are coming out of college in what many people considered a down year for men's college basketball, or people coming from the other side of the world that we just don't know who they are yet. And so I do think that in a lot of ways there's unfamiliarity in regards to, you know, a lot of the prospects in this draft. Doesn't mean that there aren't gems in the draft class, though.
Well, I mean, you just go back and you look. Like, history is going to tell you that even in what would consider bad drafts after the fact, right? Because this poor guy keeps catching strays. Brenden brings him up, I think, on the daily. Anthony Bennett, that guy he catches a ricochet every other day.
If the shoe fits, Justin.
He didn't ask to be drafted number one.
Just go back and, like, who was in charge? Are we sure we weren't drunk at the wheel that day?
I feel so bad for guys like in that spot because it's like it's not like Anthony Bennett came out and said, "Yes, I'm number one. You should draft me number one."
Right.
It's like, he just got drafted.
He got
number one.
selected.
He wasn't as good as everybody thought he was going to be. That's
right.
Not his fault. That's kind of your fault. But anyways, that's the name and that's the draft that keeps being brought up. But in that draft, there was C.J. McCollum. In that draft was Rudy Gobert. Who else was in that? Was Giannis in that draft?
Oladipo, Giannis, Gobert.
Gems.
So they're there. And I think even more so in this year's draft, because as we have seen, like, the different paths you can take, whether it is actually playing overseas, playing Europe, playing in South America, playing, even though G League Ignite is no more because Well, college basketball kind of stole their business model.
Yeah.
Like,
Pretty
hey,
much.
don't go to college, play pro. And colleges are like, how about if we just pay you?
Yeah. Come on back.
And instead of living in Henderson, Nevada, you can live on this beautiful campus
Right.
with these really good-looking co-eds, play in front of packed houses almost every night, and
That's
you
a fact.
still get paid.
Still get paid.
So that not surprising. Once that happened, G League Ignite was not long, but
Yeah.
the G League is still, I think, an option
For sure.
for players that don't want to go to school. There's the overtime elite. There's a lot of different options out there, and I think what that's done is, I think, and I'm guilty, expose some laziness. Right? I watch college basketball when Oregon is playing and when March Madness comes along.
Yeah.
That's when I watch That's when I watch college basketball. I'd be lying if I would say like I was watching, Dalton Connect play for Tennessee on a random Tuesday night. So I think the fact that it used to be so easy.
Right.
You watch Shaq, you go at LSU, you're like, that's number one overall
It's number
pick
one,
right there.
for sure.
That guy's going to be number one. Patrick Ewing before him. And you would watch college basketball guy, even Ben Simmons, right? You're like, that's a 6'10", 6'11" lefty point guard.
Yeah,
like,
for
I
sure.
think he's going number one.
Right.
But you knew who he was. He played at LSU. Now, with, the majority of the top players in the league are European players with Giannis and Jokic and Embiid. And Wemby coming in from overseas, the top two, one's from Australia, one's from France, the top two guys. I don't know if I'm 100% completely buying in to that, this draft class is down. I think it's just unfamiliar.
I tend to agree with that. And I think, again, when you have sort of that pick of the litter that is so widespread now, because you have all of these options, I do think it's hard for a lot of basketball fans and consumers to be able to just kind of take all of that in. And there's not really like a pipeline, like a narrow pipeline. There's so many different ways that you can kind of enter yourself in the league, and that just wasn't what it was in years past. So I agree with you. I think this draft could end up – I think every draft could end up being an important one because, again, somebody's coming out of this draft will be an all-star, a superstar, a sleeper, if you will, just because this entire draft pretty much is a draft full of sleepers. And I think it's one of those things where you don't take it any less serious because you don't have a Wembanyama. Because at the end of the day, only one team can pick Wembanyama.
Yeah.
Spurs got him. So everybody else, you got to worry about whoever else is left and whoever else are prospects that are available once you get to your pick. So I look at all drafts kind of the same. Yes, you might have some classes that are better than others coming in based on like the hype train, what it is that they've done in the past, or you just got a crazy number one overall pick who you know is going to be that guy to go first off the board. But I do believe that you don't treat this draft as any less important than you would any other draft that's super loaded or considered to be super loaded.
And I guess maybe to kind of put a silver lining on it for Blazer fans, I think the Blazers are kind of in a pretty good spot. And we're going to talk about what are the ultimate plans for this team coming up in about 15 minutes. But the Blazers are in a unique spot this year that they've never been in the last 10 years. It felt like it was 5 years ago that Damian Lillard got traded. It was less than a year ago.
Yes.
It was less than a year ago.
For sure.
When Dame requested a trade. It was even far less. It was September when he actually got traded. But you go back to the Blazers last year and the Blazers the year before that, they were in a position where I think a lot of fans like, all right, we still have Dame on the roster. You hit a home run, you find a guy that can contribute right away, boom, back in the playoffs next year.
Yeah.
There was might have been unrealistic, but there was an expectation that, okay, you go into the draft, we tanked, we got a pretty good pick, now let's go get that pick and get back into the playoffs.
Yeah.
I don't think anybody has those expectations anymore.
No.
Once Dame got traded away, the expectations of the Blazers are, okay, now we're in full-on rebuild. Now it is going to be a multi-year process to be able to get back to competitiveness. So you can draft a guy that's going to take 2 years or 3 years. I think that's a benefit that the Blazers haven't had since they drafted Dame.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that's one of those things where, like, if you just look at the trajectory of the league all the way around, like, it is a new era coming in. We got so accustomed to seeing sort of the same guys at the top for such a long time, whether it's, LeBron or Steph or KD and, Giannis has been up there. Like, those guys that have been there for quite a while, but you're seeing the young teams start to kind of sprout, the OKCs, the Indianas. You know what I mean? Teams that are young and have been constructed pretty well, and we're willing to take some time to kind of build this thing out. And so I think if you're the Minnesota is another example in a lot of ways. But if you're the Blazers, you definitely, again, treat this draft with very much a lot of significance because you aren't as far removed as you probably think from being back to being competitive and a playoff team. Because, again, the trajectory of the league is these young teams are starting to turn a corner, and you want to kind of catch that wave. And I think right now the Blazers are in a good position with a pair of draft picks in the top 15 to be able to really try and catch that wave, along with obviously a lot of the young assets that they already have. So I think if you're the Blazers, it's something to be excited for because you know that the wave and the tide is kind of turning in the league, and you want to be able to catch it. Even if it's toward the tail end of that tide, you want to be able to catch it, and this will be a significant part to being able to do so.
It's also interesting. We were talking about this, I think, on the show yesterday, because you think about this draft. Goal is find the next Giannis, right? Find the next Jokic. Guys,
for sure.
And if you go back and look, because it's out of sight, out of mind in the NBA, there's a lot of, I shouldn't say a lot, but there's a loud faction of Blazer fans that are like, boy, is Scoot a bust? And look at his numbers, thought maybe overvalued him or had too high of expectations. You think about who are the best players in the NBA, right? Jokic. Nikola Jokic. A lot of people, he's the MVP. He might be the best player in the world.
Yeah.
10-7 his rookie year. Played in 80 games. Scored 10 points a game.
Yeah.
His rookie year.
Yeah.
Giannis, 8 points a game.
Yeah.
Rookie year. I just looked it up. Played in 82 games, started in 73 of them as a rookie. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander went for 10-3.
Yeah.
10-3.
Rookie curve, baby.
So you
Rookie
think
curve.
about like those guys, like that's the MVP race right there.
Right.
Giannis, Jokic.
And you got to throw
Embiid
Luka
didn't
in
play
there
for 2 years because of injury.
Yeah.
So that's the MVP race right there, other than Luka, who was coming into the league scoring like 23 games. Guys like Luka are going to have, but so you think about like you're in a position where you don't need to win for 3 years and you can find somebody in development. Now you just hope you find the right guy.
Yeah. It's all about trying to find fit and again, really in the process of finding fit, really like figuring out and dialing in on an identity as well. I think it's just something that the Blazers particularly haven't been able to do, especially under like Chauncey Billups. And that's because he's just had a not so great hand, obviously coming in, inheriting Dame and kind of having to tank with Dame going through some injury this past season, way too many injuries over the course of the season. So I think right now for the Blazers, it's all about finding an identity and finding guys that you think match that identity. And I think, that starts with Scoot and DeAndre Ayton, personally.
Well, we're going to talk about that because you brought up our next subject, which is why this works so well.
That's right.
Because coming up, what is the Blazers' identity? What has to be done this summer for the Blazers to have that identity? We'll talk about that next here on 620 Rip City Radio. All right, welcome back to Rip City Mornings. Devon, Pouncey live in studio for the entire third hour.
Sorry about this, but what a banger.
This is a banger.
What a banger. It's one of those, man. Sometimes you just got to feel the beat.
Real quick, though. Is Nelly underappreciated? Like, if you were to say, hey, top whatever, not even rappers, but like just hip-hop artists, I would go toe-to-toe with Nelly's library from starting with Country Grammar, then had Hot in Here, like Must Be the Money.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
Like, Nelly's underappreciated.
I think Nelly had a chance to not be underappreciated anymore during the pandemic when we had the whole Versus situation going on.
Versus?
That
went away.
Well, it was just announced a couple days ago, or like within this past week for sure, that they're partnering with Elon over there at X. And so Versus is on its way back, folks.
Check your algorithm.
Yeah, check your algorithm, baby. I just saw the picture with Timbaland and Swizz and Elon Musk celebrating on. Matter of fact, they announced it on Juneteenth, ironically, of all days, that they're partnering with none other than Elon Musk and X. Take that for what you will. But with that being said, Nelly did a Versus against another underrated artist who gave it to Nelly, in my opinion, which was Ludacris.
Oh, yeah.
Ludacris and Nelly did a Versus, and I think Nelly did not have the greatest outing in that Versus. And I don't think it was because he didn't have the music, but I think it was somewhat like the performance element as well that just didn't go so great for him. And Versus is not, I mean, obviously it's about celebrating the hits and celebrating the music, but when you also got to perform, and Nelly just wasn't in his greatest moment. He didn't have his greatest moment performing that particular night. So I think he could have overcame being a little bit underrated, but because he didn't show up on one of the biggest nights in his musical career, which Versus was the hottest thing going at the time, I think that's still kind of why he's, below the radar a little bit.
Brenden, will you look up when Mouth of the South, when that album dropped? I want to say it's like 02. Might have been 02 when Mouth of the South.
You talking about Ludacris?
Ludacris, Mouth of the South.
No, it was Word of Mouth.
Word of Mouth?
Word of Mouth.
Okay.
MOUF.
Yes. I did say that.
yeah.
Check out the
that
oil
was actually
my Cadillac spills.
Yeah. Funny enough, that was the first album that I purchased myself. That I saved money. It was that album and Michael Jackson Invincible, baby. And those are the first two albums where I had my little, I guess what we called it, a Walkman. I know there's a different iteration of a Walkman that was prior to my generation, but just most plainly put a CD player.
So he was a Discman.
It was a Discman.
So we called it a Discman because a Walkman was a cassette player.
Right.
And that was a very big deal. You could get just the little cassette player with the headphones, because before that you had to have the beatbox.
Yeah.
Had a different name when I was a kid. I'm not going to say that.
Okay.
We might talk about that off the air
for sure.
But you had to have the big stereo, the big beatbox, the big Radio Raheem, from Do the Right Thing,
for sure.
And then the Walkman came in, you could fit it on your belt or carry it, and then the Discman.
The Discman
came.
Yeah. And so, that album, Word of Mouth by Ludacris,
Word of Mouth, 01.
And Invincible by Michael Jackson. Those are the first two CDs that I have from my own personal Discman, if you will, that I received as a Christmas gift. So that album will always be near and dear to me.
November of 2001.
I was 8 years old.
Roll Out.
Yep.
Area Codes.
Yep.
Move. Something else. It's 8:30 in the morning.
Get out the way.
It
was some bangers on that. That's a classic album for sure, especially if you ask me.
That was prime me partying too much in my life.
Yeah.
I was about 22, 23.
Yeah. See, I was 8 years old. I was just off the porch a little bit.
Lot of house parties.
Yeah.
A lot of Ludacris playing with a lot of burned CDs, ripping it right off a Napster.
He gave Nelly a hard time on Versus. I'm telling you. He gave him a hard time.
All right, so we've been talking about this draft, and Bill Orman, the Oregonian, he wrote a column yesterday. It says, prepare for the summer of dealing for the Portland Trail Blazers. And I kind of took it in our little spin here. I believe Pounce, and I mentioned one of the things that is impressive about the Boston Celtics is they won the championship, and they managed to dance around the whose team is it stuff. It always seems to happen in the NBA, right? Whose team is it? Is it Kobe's team? Is it Shaq's team? Is it LeBron's team? Is it Dwayne Wade's team? The fact that the Celtics were able to pull it off without getting into is it Tatum's team? Is it Brown's team? And they were able to, it's incredibly impressive. But that's an exception, not the rule. Everywhere else, I believe, to thrive in the NBA, I believe you have to have a clear-cut, it's so-and-so's team. Somebody's the alpha. Somebody's the driver. Somebody is the leading force. And if it's not Scoot Henderson with the Blazers, I think they're in trouble. So with that being said, I think it's time this summer to fully hand over the keys to Scoot Henderson.
Yeah.
And anybody with any veteran presence, you got to find value and trade him away, including DeAndre Ayton.
Woo.
Including, if you go and get, let's live in a what-if world, right?
Yeah.
Let's say Blazers get Klingon at 7, which is kind of one of those guys they've been linked to, kind of rumored to. 7'2", can step out, can knock down jump shots.
Right.
Dynamic center. What is he? He's 19 and a half, I think. Something like that. There's your future center. You've got your future point guard. You've got your future 2-3 combo in Shaedon Sharpe. You take those 3 guys and you build around them. And because the reason why, and feel free, because you have no worries about telling me you're a big dumb doofus. You don't say it like that, but because I go, can you truly have it be Scoot Henderson's team? If you've got a guy in Anthony Simons who arguably is better right now, played in the playoffs, now he was on a team, didn't play, but was on a team of the Western Conference Finals, is still kind of like, well, I played with Dame, and this is how we did it.
Best shot creator for himself on that team, for sure.
So you've got that guy in Anthony Simons who has an ego. Like I said, he's probably the best player, talent for talent, on this team. Can you have him around? Can you have a guy in DeAndre Ayton who's like, I'm the number 1 overall draft pick. I was in the NBA Finals not that long ago. This can be my team. That's where I want, even a guy like Robert Williams. Like, hey, a couple of years ago, I was in the NBA Finals. Malcolm Brogdon, I was Rookie of the Year. I think those are the guys, as much as I respect their basketball ability, I think it halters the true rebuilding of this organization.
Particularly when it comes to DeAndre Ayton, I would disagree. For one, he's only 25 years old. Mm-hmm. He's not old. And for two, I would be inclined to say, as you mentioned, him going to the NBA Finals with the Phoenix Suns, I'd be more inclined to say he was happier with how this last season went with the Portland Trail Blazers than he was on that NBA Finals run with the Phoenix Suns. I think he's been probably the happiest he's ever been, being able to play with the Portland Trail Blazers. I think ultimately find himself, and I think he's tapped into what he believes his full potential could be, especially during that second half of this past season. And so with his age, with the fact that, coming right in right away, like he was being criticized quite a bit early on in the season because he kind of put a target on his own back, coming in, calling himself dominating, and then, you deal with the injuries and you deal with the team not having an up year. And
he was sleeping on an air mattress.
You know what I mean? Oh, you got all, he misses the game because of the snow, because of the weather. It was a lot of people that were critical of DA because of a lot of different reasons, but post All-Star break, he indeed turned it around, and he looked like a top 5 big, especially on the offensive side of the ball in the NBA. So, and plus, I think when you do talk about Scoot, who I think at the end of the day will be the driving force for this organization because he'll ultimately have the ball in his hands the most, especially naturally being a point guard, but also, with the hype and with the expectations of being a number 3 all-around pick. I believe that Ayton is a good pair for Scoot. I also believe if you want this young team to grow and develop, you are going to have to do it, with experience and being able to kind of take some lumps. But at the same time, somebody like DA that has been around, that has gone on some deep playoff runs, and is still young enough to where once this team develops into ultimately what it wants to become, he'll still be in what's considered his prime years. You don't need to lose all your vets, especially if the day does indeed come where, hey, we're a playing team. Hey, we're a playoff team, because you want to have a little bit of veteran savvy in those moments. And again, of course, guys will get experience by, trial by fire, if you will, but like, being able to have somebody who's a vet, but also still in their prime years, and DA in particular, I think is somebody that you want to keep around. And I think his game is compatible with Scoot's game when you talk about, a guard-big tandem, personally.
Here's my thoughts, and I'm going to preface this by saying I don't know DeAndre Ayton at all. Don't know
neither.
Don't know him at all.
I've just seen him at the G League games and, of course, at the Blazer games, but don't know him either. Never had a conversation.
I wonder, does a guy who was a former number 1 overall pick, a guy that clearly he's got an ego, well-deserved, by the way, well-deserved ego. He's a starting center in the NBA. He's played in the NBA Finals. Is a guy like that going to be able to understand that the 20-year-old kid, it's his team? Is he going to be able to understand that? Because to me, that's the whole key here, is that it's not about, at this point with basketball, the game, it's about Scoot this is his organization. It has to be. You drafted him, it caused the day. It has to be his organization. And I think of the Thunder.
Yeah.
Right? The Thunder, when Dave waved them off and eliminated them, they didn't keep some veterans. All their vets gone. Paul George, Russell Westbrook, Steven Adams, I think was he on that team?
Yeah.
They're all gone.
For sure.
And then they had Chris Paul gone. And they're like, we are going down to the studs. This is Shai Gilgeous-Alexander's team. And then they drafted Chet behind him to create that combo. They didn't have that, let's bring another vet in here to teach the ropes.
Yeah, again, I don't know that. I mean, I think, yes, he's a vet in terms of how long he's been in the league. He was a one-and-done guy, you know what I mean, number 1 overall draft pick. But again, 25 years old is something that you can live with in regards to him being young enough to where he's not that far removed from, the younger guys on the team. Scoot being 20 years old. Plus, like I mentioned before, I think Scoot's game is compatible with DeAndre Ayton's, because if Scoot, in my opinion, is going to maximize his potential as a point guard, it's not just going to be scoring the basketball. He's going to have to be a distributor as well, which I think he showed a lot of signs when he was healthy and available this season that he can also pass the ball. Like, he can be a double-double machine as well. He's not particularly known as like a shooter per se. I think obviously he has time for the jump shot to continue to get better. But right now, I think Scoot's athleticism, his ability to handle the ball, and now, that he's starting to understand the game a little bit more, his ability to distribute and cut back on some of the turnovers that we saw in the earlier part of the season, I think is very compatible with DeAndre Ayton's game, who's kind of like 15 to 17 feet in, and you need a guy that's going to be able to feed you, quite frankly, because you're not considered a stretch big in the way that today's, maybe in 20 years ago, because DA can at least shoot the 15-footer, that could have worked as a stretch big, but now every big can shoot the 3 primarily, or handle the basketball like a guard and has guard skills in that way. So I think with DA still kind of being somewhat of a traditional big, and Scoot really being a guy who actually can facilitate and is going to need to facilitate to maximize his own potential, I think what they do in their skill sets are pretty compatible.
Here's the other part of it, though, and I'll be on. I get lost in these weeds as well, but there's the financial aspect of this, right? Which is, I think, just grabbing out of thin air, just spitballing, Blazers about on a 3-year path where they are right now. Hopefully getting better. Hopefully at some point in 3 years to be competitive in the West.
Yeah.
That's the 3-year path. Well, DeAndre Ayton's got 2 years left on his contract. Mm-hmm. And if DeAndre Ayton's going to be part of that, you're going to have to pay him a lot of money.
For sure.
You have to pay him a lot of money. Or
but if he played like he did in that second half of the season,
that's true.
Cash him out.
I agree. But he's also been so frustratingly inconsistent.
At least he could dunk.
He can dunk. He makes
Like,
layups.
seriously,
I know.
the
Above
guy
the
who
rim,
can't
baby.
dunk is still throwing up his flip shots in
Well, and
Phoenix.
I'm just saying, from an economic standpoint, if you get a guy like Klingon, who's not going to be as good as DeAndre Ayton, obviously day one,
Yeah.
but if in 3 years and you're going to keep him on a rookie extension, and then there's the financial aspect of it as well. There's one more thing I wanted to get to. And I've talked about it over and over and over again, and it sounds like I'm running him out of town. I am not. But we got to talk about Anthony Simons.
Yes.
I've said it over and over again. You tanked away a season to get Shaden. You tanked away a season to get Scoot. That's your future. You have to be able to have both of them on the court at the same time, starting, I believe, both in the backcourt. I don't see a basketball scenario where those two young guys can coexist with Anthony Simons. I don't see how it works.
Yeah, I mean,
in
definitely.
an NBA where length is everything,
Yeah.
that's all. You start all three of them, that's a lot of length you're giving up.
Yeah, that's definitely understandable. And I think ultimately also with Anthony Simons, like, he got paid. So I don't think anything is particularly owed to him right now in this moment in time because he got paid. And if you do end up sending him off, and obviously I think that there are going to be a lot of inquiries for Anthony Simons during this offseason. You know, if you can send him somewhere where he can help a team, and I think the inquiries are going to come from teams that feel like, hey, we're right there. We just need another scorer to be able to kind of be competitive in the Eastern or the Western Conference and to really kind of, make things tough for opposing teams in the playoffs and in the postseason. Like, I think Anthony Simons is a prime dude for that, solely off of his ability to create his own shot and score buckets when all else fails. Like, he is a special talent in that sense where he doesn't have to get a bucket in the floor of the offense. He has the ability to create a shot for himself, the athleticism to be able to create shots for himself. And there's a lot of teams in the NBA that I think could use his skill set. And again, quite frankly, he got paid by the Portland Trailblazers, so you can live with that.
And I think the big fear is, right, the Sacramento Kings made a decision a couple years ago to trade Tyrese Halliburton for Sabonis.
Yes.
And it worked for them. They made the playoff. They were lighting the beam. Remember last year? They were lighting up the beam in Sacktown.
Yeah.
And it felt like they were – and then out of nowhere, Tyrese Halliburton might have been the best point guard in the NBA at times this year.
For sure.
And so that's where it's going to be tough as the Blazer fan. I believe you have to trade Anthony Simons, and it's going to hurt. It's going to hurt because he's going to go.
He's like that.
He's going to go to Orlando and he's going to play along Paolo and he's probably going to drop at about 24, 25 a game.
He's like that,
and it's going to hurt. But I think ultimately that's a Band-Aid you have to rip off. I just think so.
I hear you.
I
ain't mad at it.
There we go. What about Zach Edey? Do you hear those rumors? Blaze? Exactly.
I'm rolling with DA. Personally, I'm rolling with DA.
Just wonder if Zach Edey's there at 14. I don't mind that pick at 14.
At 14,
don't
I
like
don't mind
it
it
at
either.
7.
At 14, I don't. I agree. I agree with you there.
A lot of 14 picks overall that we've never heard from ever again in the NBA.
For sure.
There's a chance to take a roll of the dice. We've got RCM special edition, Ebony and Ivory coming up to wrap up the big show. But before we get to that, I do want to let you know, the good folks at Toyota and us here at iHeartRadio, we need your help to fill the truck with canned and non-perishable food to benefit the Oregon Food Bank. Bring your donations and look for the specially marked Toyota Tundra this Saturday at the Fred Meyer at Boones Ferry Road in Wilsonville. While you're there, enter to win a trip for two to the iHeartRadio Music Festival in Las Vegas. Join us at Fred Meyer as we fill the truck for Toyota and the Oregon Food Bank. Special Ebony and Ivory version of the mailbag next, 620 Rip City Radio. All right, time to wrap up the big show. Very excited as Devon Pouncey sticking with us in studio, which means we have our fun little twist on the RCM mailbag. We resurrect our old segment from the glorious 6 months when we had a show. But our Ebony and Ivory segment, different cultures, means some curiosity, and we get to ask questions that not everybody else gets to ask because we have a familiarity, and maybe some people out there can learn. I know I learn a ton just by being open and having conversations like this with you. So it is time for Ebony and Ivory. All right. I understand you do not speak for your entire culture.
Right.
But you have a familiarity that I do not possess, so I was curious. If you were to, I don't drink an awful lot of soda anymore. Used to drink a lot.
Yeah.
I've cut back a ton. Don't drink a lot of it. Very, very rarely do I. But in my heyday, if I were to get a cola, I'm all about Coca-Cola.
Okay.
Coca-Cola was it. I have heard now, is it true black people prefer Pepsi?
I think it's 50-50.
Is it 50? Okay.
Yeah, I think it's about 50-50. I mean, I think
I saw a TikTok popped up.
Yeah.
That was talking about that certain cultures that most of us whites.
Yeah.
And Brenden, I think you're with me. We're Coca-Cola people.
I think
that there's a cultural thing with Pepsi.
I don't know if it's as much cultural as it is like generational.
Okay.
Where I do feel like, in the past, like previous generations to mine, at least, like it was all about Coca-Cola, RC Cola.
Yeah.
It was a cola world. And then I feel like my generation was the one that kind of like muddied the waters a little bit and brought Pepsi to prominence. I still think that Coca-Cola was equally as popular, if you will, but I do think, like, when I think about my dad or, my mom, my grandparents, uncles, aunts, and all of that, like, Coca-Cola, RC Cola was a thing early on, and then when we got old enough to make decisions for our own, we start hopping on the Pepsi wave.
So you a Pepsi guy now?
I'm not a big soda drinker either. I'm a juice. I love juice more than I do like soda. But I definitely I think now, again, that I'm a little bit older, that I can go either way and I don't mind. But I do think, like, when I was in high school, there was definitely a Pepsi run for me, for sure.
Really quick story. On Kelly and I's honeymoon, we went to Greece.
Yeah.
And we went on
nice flex.
It was so nice. Hitch your wagon to a shooting star, boys. It's the best. So when we were there, we were at the island of Paros, and we went on this boat excursion.
Yeah.
And it was his brother and sister, and they had their family's old fishing boat that they turned into a tourist boat.
Right.
And so it was a group of – so Kelly and I were there, and there was two female footballers, soccer players from England, so we were talking sports. And then there was a group of students, and let me tell you, the most multicultural group of students. And there were some of your culture. This is the most orange juice I've ever seen drank in my entire life.
Yeah, I love juice, man. Juice
on a boat where the beers were free.
Yeah.
Like the beers were paid for.
Yeah.
I never saw anybody drink more juice. More orange juice in my entire life.
Yeah. I mean, especially if they're students.
Yes,
I mean,
I know.
I think
like, you guys know there's beers down there, right?
Yeah, for sure. I think that's all. I think with that age group, it's about budgeting. And beers are all about budgeting. But if they were on a trip to Greece, if there was a multi-ethnic, multicultural group on a trip to Greece, they probably came from a little bit of something where, like, beer might have been a little bit beneath them in some way, shape, or form, and they just went for the orange juice.
Orange juice. I've never seen anybody drink more orange juice in my entire life.
You know what I'm saying? So yeah, for them to be able to be on an excursion with you and yours in Greece, I think they probably came from a little something.
So much orange juice.
My question for you is, I'm curious because I'm thinking about, my childhood and my neighborhood that I grew up in, and, like, everybody had a nickname.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm talking about you might have had, like, your in-house nickname.
Yes.
Like, I had my in-house nickname, and then you might have had, like, your community nickname, but everybody has a nickname. Hardly ever do people get called by like their actual government name. Was that you almost kind of get mad. You almost honestly like it almost feels like police-ish, like somebody snitching it. Like, man, don't be out here just throwing my government name around. You know what I'm saying? Like if somebody was out in the streets or out and about and they calling you by your government, like it's almost offensive in some ways to get called by your government name. So I'm wondering, did you and your friends call each other by nicknames a lot, or did you ever get offensive if there was a nickname that you got accustomed to being called and then somebody shows up and calls you by your actual government? Like,
I don't know if it was a small town thing or if it was a sports thing. But everybody called each other by their last name.
Got it.
That was it. Everybody, like nobody, like it was Myers, it was Shoop, it was Polamalu, it was Schaefer, it was like everybody got called by their last name. And then there kind of came when A-Rod came into like in the 90s when he got really, really good at baseball.
Right.
The first initial and the last name. Smashed together as a nickname became kind of a big deal. But no, I've never been called, like if I get called Justin, I'm in trouble.
Got
like a teacher or my parents.
Yeah,
like,
you feel like authority was on the way.
I am in trouble if somebody says, "Hey, Justin." I've been Myers. My entire life.
See,
I've always been my last name.
Yeah, I especially me, because I kind of got a unique last name, but my last name is Pouncey, but everybody just calls me Pounce. But like that's been the case my whole life. So we definitely had that. But also I grew up with a lot of guys who had rap dreams and hoop dreams, baby. And with that said,
yes,
we was rapping early. We was a little such and such at an early age, because we were trying to speak it into existence. If we had access to a studio, we was trying to rap it into existence. But
which is interesting. It's interesting because and this kind of goes to show the I think the generational thing, because when I was 9 or 10, the biggest thing, MC Hammer was the biggest thing.
For sure.
There was MC Hammer, there was Young MC, there was MC Light. MC was whatever was the nickname. And then after a while, then the Lils came in.
The Lils, yep.
As Lil Bow
I grew up
Wow
in the Lil era.
Lil Romeo
Right.
and Lil Cease and Lil Kim. And then, so the Lils were everywhere.
Yeah, the Lils that was my era for sure. So,
I grew up there with the MCs.
Lil Bobo and we had all of that. So I think for us,
did you ever have a friend who tried to because again, I've had friends who've they tried to change their name from middle school to high school.
Yeah,
it's like I'm not Nikki anymore. I'm Nicholas. It's like, no, you're not.
No,
Did you ever have a friend who no, call me Lil Such, and you're like, no, we're not calling you that.
I think no, not if it was the nickname. I think if it was people that tried to outgrow their nickname, and
Gotcha.
Say if you go off to college, or if you go, because people can in a lot of ways change their identities when they go off to school and become a whole different person from who you knew when you grew up, and then you come back home for the summer and it's like, man, you still Lil Bobo. You ain't.
Brenden became B-Slot in college.
B-Slot, okay.
High school.
High school.
So he went from Brenden in middle school, and he's like, I'm B-Slot now.
No, it's like.
No, I didn't give someone else gave me that nickname.
But you got to change it up a little bit.
Still my Twitter handle, baby.
I like it.
I got B-Slot. I got Pouncey.
That's right. That's right.
The Twitter generation is upon me.
That's right.
All right, that's going to do it for the big show. Big thanks, of course, to Devon Pouncey. Thanks to super producer Brenden. Thanks to the Pouncey and the B-Slot. I'm Justin Myers, 541, signing off on Rip City Mornings. Have a great day, everybody. We'll talk to you tomorrow, 620 Rip City Radio.